Greetings, YouTube. One of the things that I've encountered as progressive in America is that you often find yourself dealing with whataboutism. And whataboutism is a tool used by the conservatives whenever a progressive brings up an idea. For example, healthcare is a human right. They will then say, well, what about? And then they'll list off some very tiny, minuscule corner cases of why universal healthcare won't possibly work, even though it functions far better than the American system in every developed country on the planet. They ignore that part, and it costs less. They ignore that part too, because the conservatives want to cleave to our current system because their billionaire leaders have told them to, and they just do what they're told because they are suckers. And you encounter this all the time. A good example in the current news cycle is immigration at the borders. You'll say, progressives want to treat immigrants and asylum seekers humanely. And a refrain I hear frequently is, well, what about the homeless people in America? I said, okay, let's talk about homeless people in America. And suddenly they're throwing their arms up in there and start screaming socialism. The problem is, it seems that conservatives have one-track minds, and they believe that everyone else has similar laser-like focus that is unable to think about more than one thing at a time. So if I bring up immigration, since they don't want to talk about immigration, they'll then talk about homelessness. But they can't talk about homelessness, so they'll bring something else up. But they're always going to talk about one thing at a time and then move to a new topic using whataboutism, because they don't actually have solutions to any of them. So yes, we should treat immigrants and asylum seekers at our borders humanely. We should also address homelessness. Particularly, we have lots and lots of space in America that has buildings that are not being properly used. We have lots of money that we foolishly let billionaires control. There are, I believe, 2,200 billionaires on the planet, and they are currently sitting on something like $8.7 trillion worth of assets. So if we were to say, take just half of that, we could solve homelessness and hunger and healthcare and education overnight for the whole planet. But that, of course, is horrible, evil, nasty socialism, where they seem to feel that we're all going to take sickles to them in the night. But I don't want to harm them. I just want to treat everyone humanely on the planet. I mean, there are moments when I get pissed off at the conservatives of America, and I would really love to just deport all their assets to some other nation. But frankly, I don't hate anyone else that much that I would want to send Republicans there. Then maybe we could just take away their right to vote, but again, that goes against progressive standards. Though in those moments of anger, that definitely does appeal to my emotional thinking. But the reality is I want to treat everyone humanely, and I want everyone's voting rights preserved. I'm conservative and progressive, and I just want to convince the conservatives, if I can, that they're wrong, because they're wrong. You can think about more than one thing at a time. I can simultaneously be concerned about sexism and misogyny while also being concerned about immigration and asylum seekers, and also being concerned about student loan debt and military imperialism that America has exercised. And why do we have the biggest military in the world when we are no danger from anybody? I mean, our military is multiple times bigger than like numerous countries combined. We are not in a danger from anyone, and yet we act as though we are constantly in danger, much like the way Christians constantly act as though in America they're being persecuted when they are the majority and no one is actually persecuting them. But they need that defensive position, that fear, because it helps generate interest and donations and things like that. And in politics, it gets you votes. In theistic world, it gets you donations. But that same, we are being destroyed or oppressed or something by somebody else, that's the mechanism used to generate money and political power. which is also often the same thing as political power. But that's one of the reasons I'm an intersectional feminist, because I can actually understand that there are multiple vectors all at play at the same time that affect our lives. That someone's gender and their sexual orientation and their ethnicity and their nation of origin and their political allegiance and all these things intersect in very complex webs. Life is not a single lane road. It is a deep, complex, interconnecting web of everything. It is far more complex than most people think about. Think about the most complex thing you can think about, and life is more complex than that. There are things in life that are unequivocally simple to understand. Nazis are bad. That's understandable. Slavery is evil. That's understandable. Rape and murder are wrong. The problem is when we start applying that to different groups, suddenly a lot of conservatives start acting like, well, maybe there's a little more subtlety there than I thought there was. And suddenly they're defending politicians that are rapists because they want a conservative politician in that position, and he's got the best shot of achieving that end. So they're willing to ignore the fact that they're a rapist. Whereas progressives aren't. You tell me a politician's a rapist, I don't want to vote for him. They shouldn't be on the ballot. And if they're publicly bragging about assaulting women, they definitely shouldn't be in the Oval Office. And our president has done that. Bragged about sexually assaulting women. He's proud of this fact. So I can be upset about him and all the other things I talked about. I can have concern about them. I can be interested in them, and I can want them all to be solved. It isn't just a single issue thing. I despise when they ask for political. I had a political pollster come to my door the other day, and and he asked me about the top 3 issues I consider, that we're dealing with right now. And I said human rights, civil liberties, and human rights is one. I said inequality, economic, social, political, and I said the border, how we're treating immigrants. And then he pointed at a flag behind him, because there's a rainbow flag. He said, but also LGBTQ things. And I said, well, I consider those part of human rights. They aren't a separate category to me. They're just human rights. That gay people and trans people are deserving of civil liberties and human rights, just as all the rest of us are deserving of civil liberties and human rights. And I don't put them into a special category that says, no, we must deal with them separately. No. It's all one big human right, civil liberty sphere there, folks. And it encompasses all of us. Gay, straight, trans, and cis. We're all right in there. And we should all receive the same rights and privileges and responsibilities. And we don't. So I don't have a one-track mind. I'm capable of thinking about more than one thing at once. A whole lot of conservatives apparently aren't. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of them thinking that they have the answers when they aren't even bright enough to know what the questions are. Because we have to deal with complex things all at the same time. We have to be able to chew gum and walk. And apparently, they can't. And I'm tired of whataboutisms. And I want to see us move forward. I want to see us progress.